in our water infrastructure. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Assemblyman Heath Flora.
Well, good morning and thank you for coming. I just want to quickly take a moment to shout out to the 9th Assembly District, our friends in Wilton. Continue to stay vigilant, continue to do the safe things, continue to do the right things as you've been doing, but also know that my office is here for you through the next few storms, as well as the aftermath of what we got coming forward. So we're here for you, lean on us, and we'll have your back for anything that you need, so hang in there. We talked briefly about water, and my leader, he mentioned 10 years ago, we passed a couple water bonds. A lot of that money has been spent. It's been spent on environmental purposes, which in and of themselves are not a bad thing. But what we failed to do is create the storage that that money was intended to do as well. This governor has the ability to do big things. He has the ability to take on big projects, controversial things, and he's done it repeatedly, time and time again. So I'll keep my comments very brief, but I am calling on the governor to take on this. He has the ability, and where there's a will, there's a way. And right now, there's a way, we just need the will. So thank you for being here, and have a great afternoon.
Okay, and next we have my colleague, Assemblywoman Lori Davies.
Thank you for being here today. And as my colleagues have said, you know what? It's time that we actually make a move. Our governor for years has been saying to Californians, you know what, we need you to conserve water. We need you to hold back, but he hasn't kept his promise. We have. And it's time that we make him accountable. Again, why are we standing here? We shouldn't be here. This should have been done years ago when we've had a bond that the taxpayers are paying. This should have been done years ago. And so I'm hoping that this is the last time we're standing here and having this conversation. I know that the governor has got the power to make this happen. And again, we have to streamline these projects. They've got to start. There's no reason. We can go ahead, we can work with a CEQA, and we can get things up and coming. So we do have the water and the storage and the reservoirs full within the next couple of years. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Assemblywoman. And next we have my colleague, Assemblyman Juan Alanis.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming here today. So as you guys look behind us, you can see that the river behind us is not as overwhelmed as other rivers and tributaries are throughout the state, like in my district in Stanislaus and in Merced. Tomorrow I'll be touring some of the areas that have been affected in parts of Stanislaus and Merced to see the damage and everything else that's going on with it. I just want to remind everybody, as a fellow law enforcement officer, I've had to ask many people to evacuate their homes in flooding areas, and it's a hard thing to do. And so I just want to ask everybody, not especially in my district or throughout the state, to take heed in those warnings that you get. Make sure that your families are safe and taken care of. So with our rivers being flooded now, it's destroying homes to the point to where we only see the rooftops in some parts of the state. And I'm calling for our government to do better. If you guys remember, on December 5th, I proposed ACA 2. It was to codify our state's stated water storage goals into California's Constitution. ACA 2 will provide guaranteed funding for water infrastructure, and also more water storage would bring better flood control, additional water resources, and better fire prevention, healthier forests, and more relief during droughts, during periods like this that we're having today. It's a common sense proposal for our communities, and they're depending on it. The Central Valley is the home to one of the most productive agricultural regions in the world. Roughly 40% of the nation's fruits, vegetables, and nuts are grown there. And while we lost enough groundwater in the last decade to fill more than 44 Lake Tahoes, our farmers are forced to go to groundwater resources when they are continually denied their surface water allotments over bad policy and regulatory decisions out of our state and in Washington, D.C. And folks, California's working class has suffered too long because basically it comes down to them. The supply and demand matters when water is not captured, and the bad policies affect the prices. So obviously the producers are getting the cost, but they pass it on to the consumer. So that's where we are all going to be affected there. But instead of capturing rainfall and harnessing it to grow our crops and protect our communities from disaster, we are now underwater. In the long run, we have to have more water storage, whether it's above ground dams and reservoirs or helping recharge our groundwater. It's just common sense, and it's up to us here in Sacramento to make sure we're making those investments. So thank you guys. Please be safe out there, and again, heed to those warnings that you guys are receiving. I've been in law enforcement over 20 years, and it's terrible to see houses get flooded and have to evacuate and watch their lives be destroyed. We may just see it just as being the rooftops, but we got to remember, once the water subsides and stuff, they still got to rebuild their lives. So thank you guys.
Okay, thank you, Assemblymember. And next we have Assemblymember Diane Dixon.
And thank you, Leader, and thank you all for being out here today. If it were raining, we would really see the compelling need that what are we doing with all this water? And just as my colleagues are saying this morning, and we will repeat this over and over again, where is the water storage that the voters approved? I mean, they're asking those questions. I'm from Southern California, and there's a lot of discussion by our water districts and water suppliers that what are we going to do when the Colorado River completely cuts off to California? That will affect agriculture. It will affect our residents and homes all across the state. We have been, in Southern California, supporting and clamoring for a water delivery system. It's basically reservoirs. What's ironic, this week the governor talks about the financial reserves that he has maintained in the budget, but we have no water reserves. We do not have adequate water reserves. So in addition to financial reserves, we need to protect our greatest natural resource, and that is our water system. Our water, our natural water, it's free. Why don't we save it? It just really is an enigma to me that we do not protect the water that is free, comes from nature, and is going out into the ocean. It just is something that the governor has the power, just as we've talked about CEQA. They could build stadiums in Los Angeles and up in Sacramento that short circuit the CEQA requirements, but we cannot build a water reservoir. I have lived in California over 60 years. I have lived through many winters of floods and torrential rains and mudslides. I've also, obviously, as we all have, lived through periods of drought. We know this cycle occurs with regularity. This is nature. Why aren't we prepared? So I asked the governor, why isn't this state prepared through his leadership to ensure that the millions of people who live in California and depend for personal reasons, for their business, for our economy, we need adequate future water supplies. We all know that's critical. I really don't want to go, all of us as leaders, local leaders, state leaders, to go back to our constituents during the next predictable period of water shortages that will happen probably next year or the year after, and say, we now have to impose on every resident, every business to cut back their water usage. We have to, the state applies draconian measures for people. Thou shalt not use more than a gallon, a 2-minute shower or a gallon of water, or you will be fined. Is this the way we need to manage this growing state? No. The governor talks about his big ideas and how California is leading the nation in big ideas. This is a simple big idea that he can execute and implement and short circuit and get these reservoirs built. It's not rocket science. Reservoirs exist all over the country, all over the world. Build a reservoir, help the people, help the business, the agribusiness in California be prepared for the next drought we know will come. And I appreciate your helping us spread this message. It is really critical that the governor hear this message and make a big decision. Can he make that big decision to say, give the people the water they need in difficult conditions? And we're here to support that. Thank you so much.
right, thank you. So you've heard from some great members here this morning about the Republican ideas to solve this water crisis that we're in right now, this infrastructure crisis that we're in right now. And we are going to be very proactive. We're introducing our own legislation, as we've talked about, codifying goals, guaranteeing funding, but also let's do the policy work of streamlining these processes so that it doesn't take so long to build this vital infrastructure in this state. And we will stand with the governor to make this happen. If he will take this on, if he will fund Sites Reservoir and streamline the process with these agencies, we're ready to work with him to get that job done, because it's in the best interest of all of us to finally build new water infrastructure in the state. New water storage needs to be built. The last time was 1979, New Melones. Has a lot changed in California since 1979? I would say so. We've doubled our population here in California, and yet we haven't made those investments. It's an embarrassment, but there's something we can do about it. There's something we can do about it by taking action right now, all of us working together to solve this problem. We stand ready to do it and be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Yeah, so there is money for flood control, and that's something that we have certainly applauded. We think there needs to be more investments in vital flood control infrastructure. As I said, I even highlighted, there has been some good investments, including here in Sacramento, in West Sacramento, Yuba City, there's been, but mostly more of the urban areas. We need to get out to the rural areas. There's a lot of rural projects that need to be done because they're bearing the brunt of these stormwaters right now. So that's one key issue. What there is not in this budget is any money for new water storage. In this current year budget, there's nothing in there that is going towards these vital projects like Sites Reservoir that need to get built, and that's a problem. So we are calling on the governor, and certainly we in the legislature are going to work through this budget process to make sure that that happens. We need this we need this money going to water infrastructure. And I'll say one more thing. The very least that we could do right now, because we don't have this stuff built. We should, but it's not built. But one thing we could do right now is with these excess flows, we could turn on the pumps and get water out to the vital Central Valley, who is struggling right now. Communities are lacking drinking water, and there are farms that are not having water to grow crops. We could take these excess flows right now. We could have flexibility in our regulatory system to get these excess flows where it's vitally needed in the valley. And my colleague Vince Fong has a letter that'll be coming out calling for exactly just that. That's something we could do right now with existing infrastructure, and it's something that we should do. It's a smart move.
Yeah, it's really simple. The governor set these goals. These are goals that have been put out before. 3.7 million acre feet, 4 million acre feet. This is just codifying it so we can hold his feet to the fire. We do the same thing with climate change policies with, hey, we're going to stop gas motors. We're going to get rid of gas lawn motors by certain dates. All we did in this bill is copy paste that and put in the water storage language. It's that simple.
Any other questions? Go on, Eitan. We certainly support desalinization. We have, Republicans have been calling for greater investments in desal. We think that's another thing that we should be doing. But I want to turn to my colleague Heath Flora, who right now his district is experiencing, the brunt of the lack of investments, to talk about really what needs to be done to move these vital projects forward.
Thank you, Leader. And kind of to your question about the money, we applaud the governor for the money that he has put in the budget, and we certainly think there could be more of that. But I think one of the secrets that doesn't get talked about is the regulatory burden that happens with these projects. The bureaucracies within the state of California are so immense, and to actually build a project, there is hundreds of hurdles that they have to get over. And so the money is one thing, but at some point the governor and the power of the governor's office, we have to put our thumb on that scale and streamline some of these regulatory bureaucracies, because they have the ability right now to stop anything, and they have. They've stopped every storage project for the last decade through their power, and so that is one thing. And I think it's something we need to talk more about. Money's one thing, and the governor has it, but we also need him to help us out with streamlining some of the regulations and the permitting process for all of this. As far as desal, we love desal. We are not going to conserve our way out of this water. We're not going to store enough water. The state of California is a desert. Okay, we live in a desert, and it's the way it has been for many, many years. We need everything. Every piece that has desal, storage, conservation, that is all part of these solutions. And it is something that we're all very, very committed. And this governor has made progress in that. He's very supportive of desal, and that is a good start. So appreciate it.
You look at this number right here, 22 trillion gallons. If you think about the drought orders, the governor asked people to cut back to 30 gallons a day. Think about that. 40 million people, 30 gallons a day, 22 trillion gallons gone that we could have had to meet groundwater recharge goals, to meet other goals. When I'm down in LA, I hear people complain, oh, the farmers are exporting our water. Well, the governor just let 22 trillion gallons of water go. Call on him and have him answer why.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah, go ahead. So I'm very familiar with 2017 when Oroville Dam almost collapsed, right? We had one of the wettest years on record. We had a full lake at Lake Oroville, a very precarious situation. Another example of why our infrastructure needs to be modernized and we need to make investments in this. We had a full lake in 2017. How did we manage that water? And why are our reservoirs like at the bottom, some of the lowest levels they've ever been? It's because we're doing releases and we have policy in place that doesn't make a lot of sense. We're not really storing water for that drought season, and so we end up where a reservoir that should be providing us water for 5 years of drought is really only providing us for water for 1 year. And so the fact that our reservoirs were empty and now they're filling up is actually it's a failure. That's actually more of a failure than it is something to laud, right? But we do need more reservoirs, and those reservoirs, trust me right now, with the kind of water that we have coming and the snowpack that we have now, those reservoirs are going to fill up quick. And that is why we need new reservoirs and new infrastructure. And one more thing about desal, yes, we've made some progress on that front, but the Coastal Commission, again, another example of bureaucracy, is a big part of the reason why a lot of those desal plants are not moving forward. They've thwarted those vital projects from moving forward as well. So it's another example where we're letting bureaucracy and where we're letting regulatory bodies block vital projects. We need a streamlining. These are vital. We need these for the future of our state. For not only for this generation but for the next. And if we don't start removing these barriers and making the vital investments in these things, it is going to have a very negative impact on the future of our state. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sites, I think, is the one that you could do very easily. So, and what's frustrating is we've all fought for this, and we actually fought in a bipartisan fashion to make sure that Prop 1 water bond money went to these types of projects. We did that. The Water Commission ultimately allocated almost $1 billion towards the sites project. There's also Los Vaqueros that could be improved to store even more water. So there's several projects out there, but sites is the one that would be very easy to do. The money's already been allocated for it. It's gotten federal money allocated towards it. The money is there. The funding is there. The only thing standing in the way right now is the permitting process. It's the permitting process at the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the water right process through the Water Resource Control Board. So if we can streamline those processes and make sure that this project moves forward, we could start building that project very soon. And again, I think all of us are saying it should already be underway. It should already be under construction. You know, it shouldn't take this long to build vital infrastructure projects in this state. That's the frustration, and that's what we want to change. No, because we have the money, because Prop 1 passed, and that bond money was for these types of projects. So, you know, we're not talking about general fund money here, although I think we should start allocating general fund money to build more and invest more in water infrastructure in the state, and that's part of what we're trying to do, you know, with our ACA, is like, let's start guaranteeing money towards these vital projects to make sure that every year in the budget, we're planning for vital water infrastructure, water and flood control infrastructure. We're going to have deficits, you know, we know that, you know, we have to work through them, but, you know, deficits is a time to start thinking about what are the fundamental priorities of governance, and that's another thing that we need to get right. A lot of things that we're doing, we went through $100 billion pretty quickly last year, now it's not here, and now we got a $22 billion deficit. We better make sure we get things right, like infrastructure, education, and public safety. Yeah, I mean, I really feel in the legislature there's actually been a lot of bipartisan, you know, coming together, especially on sites. That's a project that's been supported by Democrats and Republicans. We all see it as a vital project, but I think we're all frustrated on why it hasn't moved forward. I think we've come together on on flood control as well. In the past, like I said, there have been some really good investments made here, right here in Sacramento. For instance, that's been a bipartisan effort. But we certainly need to do more. We have a big system, and I think you'll see Republicans and Democrats in the legislature come together on those issues. Okay, well, thank you guys for your time today. We appreciate it, and we are going to be working hard, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to make some progress on this issue in the coming year. Thank you.